Welcome to Lacktausch. First of all, I would like to give you an idea of where this channel comes from and what its history is. As this is a German channel, most of you have probably never heard of me. In the German sim racing community, this channel has become known for following and commenting on the Fanatec case over the last 18 months or so. While doing that, I've been in regular direct contact with Thomas Jackermeier, the founder and former CEO of Endor, which is sort of the umbrella company to Fanatec. In the following video I will use Endor and Fanatec synonymously, as these names actually stand for the same company. During the Fanatec crisis I naturally also followed the reports of the English-speaking YouTubers about this case, and I rarely liked what I saw and heard there. That's why I often toyed with the idea of making a video in English about this case last year. But unfortunately, while this whole process was going on, I always lacked the time to do so. And also, it's a very complicated matter and I'm not a native speaker. So I hope I can get the facts along correctly. Now that the takeover of Fanatec by Corsair has been finalized, I finally have the time to do this for the first time. As you may know, the Landshut Public Prosecutor's Office has been investigating the executive board of Endor for some time now, with the accusation being breach of trust. Other criminal offenses are still being investigated and 3 proceedings are ongoing. This was last reported in the Landshut newspaper on January 19th, 2025. Of course, the presumption of innocence applies to all of these events. Nevertheless, it is a good opportunity to scrutinize the executive board of Endor once again. This video contains traces of speculation, facts and satire. If you are annoyed or agree, please use the comment function. But let's start with a brief summary of the events of the past year. And who better to summarize the events for us than Thomas Jackermeier himself? So here are the events from his point of view, taken from an interview he gave to the Landshut newspaper and which was published on January 19th, 2025. Many shareholders are of the opinion that this was a textbook hostile takeover. First you make the owners a fair and high offer, but not in your own name, so that you can easily withdraw it later. As part of the due diligence process, you then gain access to the acting managers and can bribe them to sabotage the company and make it ready for the takeover. Then more moles are infiltrated until there is a solid majority in the management and the owner's rights are taken away with the help of a bunch of expensive lawyers. By manipulating figures and deliberately spreading untruths about the main owner and CEO, some of the creditors are drawn to their side and ultimately the new Staruk law is misused to expropriate the shareholders. To keep up appearances, a pseudo process is set up, but internal forces ensure that there are no alternatives to the one bidder. This is not in the interests of all creditors and certainly not in the interests of the owners, but ultimately leads to a company being taken over at a fraction of its true value. I am still shocked at what greed and envy can do to people and how unscrupulously I was betrayed by close confidence. The current board of directors and Corsair's representatives, above all Corsair's CEO Andy Paul, naturally see things a little differently. Andy Paul presented his view of things in an interview with Boosted Media. I made a long video about it, you find the link of it at the top right. In his opinion, Thomas Jackermeier simply lost the plot at some point and drove the company economically into the ground. However, all the facts and evidence we know about this speak a completely different language. The course of the takeover and the many inconsistencies add to my doubts about Andy Paul's account. If you are a regular viewer of this channel, which I suppose you are not, but Maybe you are, I don't really know. You will already be very familiar with the details of the takeover, and maybe I will make some videos in English in the future about these details. But let's get back to Thomas Jackermeyer's last sentence from the quote. I am still shocked at what greed and envy does to people and how unscrupulously I was betrayed by close confidence. He is probably referring here to the other members of the board of directors, Matthias Kosch, Daniel Meyberg, and in particular Belma Nadarevic, who worked closely with Thomas Jackermeyer for many years and was responsible for Fanatec's marketing and still is today. But let's start with the kingpin, Andres Ruff, who initially joined Endor as CRO shortly after Thomas Jackermeyer's dismissal on April the 12th and was appointed CEO just 3 days later. That's quick. I imagine his move to Endor going something like this. Listen, Andres, we've got this executive suit that we always put on Jackermeyer's chair since he's left. But the fine Italian fabric keeps slipping off the chair and landing on the floor. It's just too slippery. Can you please just put the suit on and sit there? That would be nice. We pay well too. Thank you. Of course, it's also possible that Mr. Ruff drew up extremely complex contracts for Endor and negotiated so hard with Andy Paul about the takeover that he was sweating blood and water. However, apart from a few extremely meaningless press releases, he has not made any further public appearances. Accordingly, his contract was only ever extended by a few months, as is the case with precarious employment relationships, and Andres Ruff left Endor again on February 1st, 2025 and has gone back to his original industry. This is certainly bad news for the turkeys. But now to the actual figurehead of Endor during the restructuring, the supposed recapitalization, the Staruk proceedings, the subsequent insolvency and the sale to Corsair via a presumably very favorable asset deal. Before joining Endor, Matthias Kosch worked for Blue Cap for 15 years. A company specialized in corporate takeovers and transformations. I am certainly not going too far when I say that Matthias Kosch is an expert in corporate analysis and mergers and acquisitions. As such, he then applied to Endor in 2023, initially working alongside Andras Semsey on the executive board from November 1st, 2023, before succeeding him on January 1st, 2024. That Matthias Kosch applied to Endor AG on his own initiative, as Thomas Jackermeyer told me in a phone call in May 2024, seems pretty remarkable to me. This kind of thing is usually done via headhunters, or one company recruits managers directly from another company. So did Matthias Kosch himself scour the market for companies in turmoil that required his expertise? How likely is it that he came across Endor on his own initiative? Although Endor was the global market leader in its field, it was in an absolute niche market. I doubt that top managers from the business world had Endor on their radar. Or was Matthias Kosch probably contacted by a large corporation and persuaded by it to apply to Endor so that he could subsequently act as an intermediary or mole in a top position and steer the company entirely in the interests of the corporation willing to take it over? We can only speculate on this. There is a lack of solid evidence. However, the events of 2023 and 2024 suddenly make much more sense under this premise. The lack of the annual financial statement for 2023 and the prevention of an extraordinary general meeting, the very early exclusivity of the negotiations with Corsair, the ignoring of all alternative investors, the transfer of central and/or brand rights to Corsair in order to secure a relatively manageable bridging loan, and so on and so on. Is this the behavior of a CFO who represents the interests of his own company? I already asked this question in many of my videos from last year, and I'm sure you can answer it for yourselves by now. For Matthias Kosch, however, it is now mission accomplished. According to Landshut Local Court's register entry dated January 9th, 2025, he has also already left the company. Let us now turn to Daniel Meyberg. Daniel Meyberg had already been head of development at Endor for a year when he was appointed to the management board of Endor as COO, which means Chief Operating Officer, on June 1st, 2023. According to the company sources, he actively sought this position for a long time. As COO, his area of responsibility is roughly outlined as the operational business. He has a sound background in the following areas, among others: supply chain management and customer relationship management. Well, then he's done a fantastic job, I hear you say now. As far as these two areas in particular are concerned, 2023 and 2024 were a total train wreck for Fanatec. Customers had to wait months for their orders. Items were not available because tiny components were missing, such as the QR1. The webshop was and is in a legendarily desolate state. Customers had to wait weeks for a response from the service department for defective products. Heaps of unusable chips were bought for millions of euros. In an ill-considered rush, many items were flown in from China by expensive air freight instead of being transported by the much cheaper sea route as usual. And guess who most of the mail complaints from Chinese suppliers about non-payment that I reported on last summer were addressed to? Right. So much for Daniel Meyberg, short and sweet. Oh, I almost forgot one thing. On January 30th in 2024, Matthias Kosch announced in an ad hoc announcement that the sales and earnings forecasts for 2023 were being drastically lowered. As a result, the Endor share price plummeted. On February 1st, 2024, Daniel Meyberg then took advantage of the low share price to acquire 10,000 shares at an average price of €2.98 per share. Just one day later, on February 2nd in 2024, a rather optimistic forecast for 2024 was announced in the next ad hoc announcement. As a result, the share price naturally shot up again. Daniel Meyberg has really shown a golden touch here. No wonder, as a member of the board of the company whose shares he traded in, it can be assumed that he had access to information that remained hidden from other market participants. I am not in a position to judge whether or not his share purchase really fulfills the criteria for insider trading, and I will not call a judgment on this here. However, the whole thing does seem a little fishy and dubious. But it's just one small link in a long chain of oddities. And to be honest, of course you also have to ask when Daniel Meyberg sold these shares again. If he has held them until now, they have become practically worthless and he has gained no monetary advantage from his dubious trade. Moreover, one has to ask why he acquired shares in this company in the first place, when he must have known that it would enter into Staruk and, if necessary, even insolvency proceedings. if this was the plan from the outset, as I have often surmised. The decisive factor here is therefore whether and when he sold his shares again. Of course, this would also have required an ad hoc notification. I hope that the Public Prosecutor's Office will also take a close look at this as part of the ongoing investigations. Similar oddities are not found with Belma Nadarevic, however.
Yeah, no need to worry here at all.
By all accounts, she has done an excellent job. She had already been head of the marketing department at Endor for many years and as such responsible for the high brand awareness of Fanatec. Belma Nadarevic has worked closely alongside Thomas Jackermeier for all these years. On June 1st, 2023, she was appointed to the management board of Endor together with Daniel Meyberg and to the post of CMO, created especially for her. When I asked Thomas Jackermeier in a phone call in spring 2024 whether he trusted Belma Nadarevic, his answer was absolutely, without any restrictions. Unfortunately, he had to revise this statement a few weeks later. Daniel Meyberg was the one who voted for my dismissal, and Belma Nadarevic told me and the supervisory board that it was Ingo Weber who told the board of directors that the Public Prosecutor's Office was investigating the board of directors. This strictly confidential information was only intended for the supervisory board, and if Belma's statement is correct, then Ingo Weber has committed a gross breach of duty here and he could be dismissed immediately. Although Belma knew this, she refused to put her statement in writing or make it available to the police. These are the sad facts. But who is this Ingo Weber we are talking about here? Among other things, Ingo Weber is a member of the supervisory board of Endor. He is a high-ranking politician of the Bündnis für Deutschland, which is called or could be translated to Alliance for Germany, in Baden-Württemberg, which is a southern part of Germany, and member of the Business Angels Network Germany. In all his angel-likeness, he is correspondingly lenient when it comes to dealing with corporate crisis.
Ich glaube, bei Krisen machen Schuldzuweisungen keinen Sinn und es ist gegenseitige Schuldzuweisung oder Beschimpfungen sondern ich glaube, man muss sich überlegen, was sind die Ursachen für die Krise. Relaxed mit der Krise umgehen vielleicht, ja, ohne deren Bedeutung zu unterschätzen und es zu objektivieren und wichtig immer zu sagen, okay, Vergangenheit ist Vergangenheit, jeder macht mal Fehler, ist was blöd gelaufen, alles okay. Wichtig ist der Blick nach vorne und jetzt nehmen wir uns alle gemeinsam an der Hand und schauen, dass wir den berühmten Karren da aus dem Dreck gezogen bekommen.
So he is a friend of a relaxed approach to crises and the joint search for a way out of them. But what exactly did that look like in the case of Fanatec? Oh yes, instead of reacting relaxed and working together to find a way out of the crisis, Thomas Jackermeier was quickly removed from his post, banned from the company and completely locked out of Endor's digital systems. So is Ingo Weber really a so-called business angel? In any case, his handling of this crisis doesn't seem too relaxed or supportive. Ingo Weber also reacted less than relaxed on Twitter when he was asked by an alleged investor in Endor why he was allowing the shareholders of Endor to be expropriated without need. In response, Mr. Weber simply disparaged the investor as a speculator, an outrageous statement for a supervisory board member, considering that one of the core tasks of the supervisory board is to stand up for the interests of the shareholders. You don't believe me? Well, you don't have to. Fortunately, there are far more competent voices than mine who see it exactly the same way. For example, the stock market expert from the renowned German stock market and trading community Share Deals, Marco Messina. He commented, "I would say with this tweet you have perfectly documented your non-existent suitability as a supervisory board member." I can only agree with that. According to Thomas Jackermeier, this same Ingo Weber is said to have informed the executive board of Endor, in breach of his duties, that the public prosecutor's office had opened an investigation. I am not in a position to judge whether this may even constitute the offense of paragraph 258 in the German law, offense of obstruction of justice, or possibly aiding and abetting the same. Such behavior is at least morally questionable. Back to the management board of former Endor company. If we now take another look at the board of directors as a whole, and in particular the dates on which the members joined, it is noticeable that after Thomas Jackermeier left, only board members who had been with the company since mid-2023 at the earliest were still represented. In my view, this alone is evidence in favor of Thomas Jackermeier's theory that the executive board was replaced by external influence in order to gain control over the company. But what happens now for the remaining members of the executive board? I am quoting from an article in the Landshut newspaper from January 19th, 2025. According to Corsair, some people from the Endor board have moved to Corsair to work in marketing and product development. The company did not give any names. Uiuiui, that sounds very mysterious. Who could it possibly be? So who's left on the board of directors? Aha. Belma Nadarevic and Daniel Meyberg. And which areas are they both in charge of? I see, marketing and operations. And we know that Daniel Meyberg is the former head of product development at Fanatec. Well, I really have absolutely no idea who could move where to Corsair now. Only an absolute genius, an unrivaled mastermind could work that out.
I think the problem with people like this is that they are so stupid that they have no idea how stupid they are.
And last but not least, if we now take a look at the archive of ad hoc announcements from Endor, large and perhaps decisive gaps jump out at us. Suddenly, Daniel Meyberg's share purchase from February has disappeared. And the ad hoc announcements that Belma Nadarevic and Daniel Meyberg had joined the management board are also missing. There is also a huge gap between May 2023 and August 2021, and the reports on the record sales in 2021 and 2022 have seemingly also been lost. Coincidence? If it is an attempt at a cover-up, then it must be a highly amateurish one, because a complete documentation of the ad hoc reports can be found on the EQS news website without any problems. So, why all this? The events within and around Endor remain dubious. Let's hope that the Landshut Public Prosecutor's Office will do everything in its power to shed light on this. Stay clean, see you soon, and goodbye.